The story begins with Chris Washington, a talented African-American photographer heading upstate for a weekend trip with his white girlfriend, Rose Armitage. It's supposed to be a simple meet-the-parents visit. As they drive through the tranquil roads, the trip seems peaceful until they hit a deer. The incident might feel random, but it's an eerie foreshadowing of the chaos that's about to unravel. After calling the police to report the accident, the cops' interest in Chris, despite him not even driving, throws a subtle hint of discomfort. But Rose steps in, defending Chris, and they continue on their way. It feels like a minor incident, but something is already off. They finally arrive at Rose's family estate, a beautiful, secluded home nestled in the woods. Chris meets her parents, Dean, a charismatic neurosurgeon, and Missy, a refined hypnotherapist. While they seem welcoming at first, their behavior starts raising Chris's suspicions. Dean constantly drops friendly comments about how much he loves black culture, almost too much. You can feel the tension building, like something lurking just below the surface. Then there's Rose's younger brother, Jeremy, who adds a whole new level of creepiness. He's overtly aggressive and disturbingly fascinated with Chris's physique, offering to wrestle him at dinner. It's unsettling, and Chris is starting to feel like he's walking into a trap, but Rose continues to reassure him, brushing everything off as harmless. That night, Chris can't sleep, so he heads outside to grab a cigarette. That's when things start to get really weird. He sees Walter, the groundskeeper, sprinting full speed in the dead of night, like he's running from something invisible. And inside the house, Georgina, the housekeeper, stares blankly into mirrors, her smile unnervingly forced. Chris is on edge. Just when he decides to retreat back to bed, Missy, Rose's mother, catches him and insists on helping him quit smoking through hypnosis. Reluctantly, Chris agrees, but before he knows it, he's sinking into darkness, both mentally and physically. Missy's hypnosis traps him in what she calls the sunken place, a terrifying void where he loses control of his body but remains fully conscious. It's a horrifying introduction to what's really going on, but Chris doesn't fully realize it yet. The next day, things get even stranger as the Armitages host a lavish party with a parade of wealthy white guests. These guests treat Chris as if he's some sort of exotic specimen. They comment on his physique, his skin, and even his genetic advantages with a twisted kind of admiration. It's uncomfortable to watch, and Chris is starting to feel the full weight of how out of place he really is. In a brief moment of relief, he meets a blind art dealer named Jim Hudson, who seems normal in comparison. Jim praises Chris's photography skills, and they have a pleasant conversation. But the moment of normalcy is short-lived when Chris meets another black guest, Logan King, who behaves oddly robotic. Logan, dressed much older than his years, doesn't seem right. Curious, Chris snaps a photo of him, and that's when things spiral out of control. The camera flash seems to snap Logan out of a trance, triggering a wild outburst. Logan's nose starts to bleed as he desperately screams at Chris to "Get out!" It's a chilling moment, and while the Armitages quickly cover it up as an epileptic episode, Chris knows something's very wrong. Desperate, he convinces Rose to leave, unaware of the deeper horrors lurking in the house. But it's too late. While Chris prepares to escape, he stumbles upon a box filled with photographs of Rose with other black men, and even Georgina and Walter. It's clear now. Rose has been luring black people to her family, and Chris is next. His instincts were right all along, and this Meet the Parents trip was a setup from the beginning. As Chris tries to flee, Missy hypnotizes him once again, locking him back into the sunken place. When he wakes up, he's strapped to a chair, watching an eerie video from Rose's grandfather, Roman. The Armitages aren't just interested in black people. They're transplanting the brains of their wealthy white friends into black bodies, keeping the original consciousness trapped in that horrifying void forever. But Chris isn't going down without a fight. He cleverly plugs his ears with stuffing from the chair, blocking Missy's hypnotic cues. when Jeremy comes to drag him into surgery. Chris fights back, killing Jeremy and Dean in a desperate struggle. He escapes the house, but not before accidentally hitting Georgina with his car. In a moment of guilt, he tries to save her, only to realize she's been brain-switched too. Georgina is actually Rose's grandmother, and she attacks Chris in a vicious rage. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Chris faces off with Rose and Walter, but using his phone's flash, he manages to wake the real Walter, who, in a heartbreaking moment of clarity, kills Rose and then himself. Chris, bloodied and broken, is ready to give up when a police car pulls up. It feels like the worst possible ending until the door opens and Rod, Chris's best friend, steps out. Rod had been suspicious from the start, and his loyalty saves Chris in the end. As they drive off, leaving the carnage of the Armitage estate behind, we're left with a sense of relief, but also the haunting realization of the horrors Chris barely escaped.